from Haas Business School.
Would you assume?
What many people assume is that I'm happy, but many people don't realize that I'm scared.
I'm afraid of being misunderstood.
We're all afraid of something. We're all insecure about something.
Yeah, I wake up every day with the fear of deportation.
Lots of us are just afraid of what we don't know.
Don't assume, ask what you don't know.
You don't know about Islam? Ask me questions. Won't offend me.
And if you ask me, I'm Filipino.
I'm Apache and Comanche.
I'm very much proud of my spirituality.
I am a she.
I am a he.
I'm straight.
I'm a lesbian.
I am a husband. I am trans.
I am a 3-time cancer survivor.
I'm Mexican Chinese. I'm gay.
I am a proud Muslim.
I am an ally.
I am an ally.
Not only am I an ally, I'm a champion.
My truth does not have to be someone else's truth, but they are still true.
So we're asking you to tell us who you are.
Be seen and be recognized.
Be part of a more diverse and more inclusive culture.
Help us move forward together.
Because together, we are Salesforce.
Juntos somos Salesforce.
We are Ohana.
And Salesforce welcomes all.
Can I hug you? Okay.
Good morning, good morning. Day one, Trailhead, DX. So thank you for coming to the Life at Salesforce session. That was our recent Proudly Me video done by our Office of Equality that was recently established. My name is Gino Ramos. I've been with the company for about 8 years now. Started out in procurement, moved over to legal operations, and now I am fortunate enough to work under the Office of Equality and our Chief Equality Officer, Tony Profit. But today we want to go ahead and share with you all in regards to the life at Salesforce. And we have an awesome panel for you today. So I'll invite my panelists up here. We got Jim, we got Janine, Seema, and Diego. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. We only have 2 mics, so you guys share them. Nice, and I'll have you all introduce yourselves, role, how long you've been with the company, and yeah, no, that should be good, that should be good. We'll start off with Jim.
Good morning. It's on. Good morning. Jim Sinai, I have been at Salesforce for 6.5 years, almost 7. I've been in product marketing the whole time, but I've worked on like 6 different products. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my story, moving around within my function a lot.
My name is Janine Walters. I'm an architect in development here at Salesforce. I've been here for 13 years.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a long time. A great 13 years. I've been in engineering the whole time, but also worked on different products because we've had many different products. Right now, I'm working on Lightning Platform.
Hi, I'm Diego. I've been in the company for about 5 years, and I'm one of the architects for the Lightning Platform. So, any questions? I'm here.
Hi, I'm Seema Kumar. I'm also in the product marketing team like Jim, and I've been here for 6 years. I've actually moved around from functions. So I was in product management, and then Jim actually convinced me to come over to product marketing. I think of the dark side, the fun side. We'll talk about that. And I think I've probably worked in like 4 or 5 different business units. So you're probably hearing a theme about getting to move around and do a lot of different things at Salesforce.
Cool. So as we talk, feel free to start thinking up of questions because you do have a Q&A session right after, so we'd love to hear questions from the audience as well. But want to kind of kick it off with a generalized question on how has the company been able to retain the identity and culture that it has? It's super strong during its rapid growth, and what do you love about this culture that we're in?
So I've been here for a lot of the growth, so I'll start off. Back when I started 13 years ago, all of the developers sat in one little area. We could all see each other. It was very different. So if anyone had anything to say, they would stand up, speak a little louder, and then it was done. So things have changed a lot since then, but we've been fortunate to have our founders with us, and that's made a big difference in keeping our culture going, and they've been very attentive to making sure that we make the culture something that is consistent within Salesforce and is good for our employees and good for our community. So one of my favorite things about that has been how transparent they are. That they are open to questions, whether it be in a company all hands. They always take questions at the end, kind of like we're going to do at this session as well. And once we got bigger than we could all fit in within shouting distance, we got chatter, and that has made a huge difference in how we communicate to each other internally. So if you have a question, you post a question on somebody's wall, and then they answer. And and if you're unclear what Chatter is one of our products that allows you to communicate with each other, with everybody in the company around different records and different groups, and explain and be able to have conversations. And it's super useful for us internally. We had one person join our company maybe a year ago or two who had heard about Chatter a lot from the outside, and then when he came, he's like, I had no idea what this thing can do. And it's really been transformative to our culture and allowed us to grow a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like with the Ohana, what we call our family here at Salesforce, it was one of the groundbreaking tools when I first started to help break down the silos between the departments and geographies. I was able to form one of our employee resource groups called Outforce. It's our employee resource group for sexual orientation and gender identity globally really, really fast to get on board with the messaging around equality, diversity, and inclusion. So it was really one of the most easiest things I've ever done in comparison to other companies using our own products. It's one of the things I love about it. Any other comments about the culture or what you love about it?
I think one other thing that's really allowed us to keep our culture as we've grown. So when I joined, we were 6,500 people, and I think we're now 27,000.
Yep.
I think one of the things that's really helped us is our V2 Mom process. And the V2 Mom is how we do our planning every year. It's how everyone in the company, from Mark Benioff, our CEO, all the way down, decides on what we're going to work on as a company and what our priorities are and how we're going to get it done. And V2 Mom stands for vision. So we set our vision and what our values are, so what's most important to us, and that's partly why we're all here today, because this is important to us. The methods, so what we're going to get done, the obstacles, why it's going to be really hard, what challenges we face, and then the metrics, how we measure our success, how we'll know if we've accomplished our goals. And it starts when Mark writes his V2 Mom with the help of his direct reports, and that V2 Mom gets posted on Chatter for everybody in the company, all 27,000 employees to take a look at, to comment on, to say, I think we're missing something really important. I think the priority of these is wrong. And we go through that review process for a couple months, and then we cascade that down. So everybody on Mark's team gets a method assigned to them. They then write their V2 Mom, and they do the same process with their team of collecting feedback. And it cascades all the way down to every single employee. So everybody can say, here's my V2 Mom, and I can see how this maps back to what Mark thinks is important and to what my executives are working on. And so the whole year, you know how what you're working on is important and where it maps into our corporate priorities. And I think that has been an amazing planning process and tool that helps everybody who joins this company understand what our culture is, what our values are, and how we make decisions.
Any other comments about the culture?
I'll say the biggest surprise for me when I joined, and I think this is still surprising for some people, is learning about our 1-1-1 model. The company donates 1% of our profits, 1% of our product uses, 1% of employee time back to our communities. So that could be any nonprofit around you. A lot of people work in their kids' school. I work with a nonprofit that supports homeless youth. People work for environmental issues, just everything across the board. It's up to everyone. And they make it it's so integral to our culture, and they make it part of everything. It's part of the V2 Mom process. It's part of your employee orientation. When you start Salesforce, they take you out on your first volunteer event. And so it'll show up everywhere throughout the company. And I think it speaks a lot to, what our values are and how much we care about the community around us.
Yeah. So with this culture, how does someone become successful at Salesforce? What do we look for when we hire somebody onto our Ohana?
So, I guess this dovetails from the culture. Being successful, I think, is about everyone having a sense of ownership. So our V2 Mom helps us understand everyone's swim lanes. but we are, like, the people that get ahead at Salesforce are people that have a bias for action. So in many ways, we kind of have we have a mentality of a startup where we feel like everything's on fire, we're super competitive, there's urgency behind everything we do, but we also tolerate failure really well. Like, I've never seen anyone walked out because they tried something and it didn't work. The only rule in our company you cannot break is trust. Meaning if you do something that goes against the trust of the company, of your employees, of the customer, then you're pretty much out that day. But other than that, we're really permissive of shooting for the stars. So as a result, we have a really energetic sort of, I call it a GSD, get shit done culture. And, I'm sorry, I curse a lot. That's my trust failure. But I think that, like, when I look at where people are successful is when they take ownership of things and they say something's not working the way it should, and I'm going to go ahead and come up with a better way to do it, rather than just sit back and
let it happen
or complain about it.
Right.
And part of it is we have a culture that permits that conversation, and then we hire people that are all about sort of focused on achievement. So I think that's the like, regardless of what department, getting stuff done. But I think the other thing is a little bit more nuanced. We also have a really strong culture of people that, they how would I say this? They look at no as a starting point for a discussion. So, or they always say yes, meaning that, like, I've never had people say to me, well, no, go away, we're not doing that. It's always like, okay, well, tell me about why that's important, or let's talk through an idea, or let's figure out how to do it right. And so when your leaders have that attitude, then you feel like you can actually be successful in the things that you try.
Yeah, like an open, collaborative environment.
And then we do a really good job as a company of celebrating success. So managers have this tool called the spot bonus. If someone does a heroic thing, they can award cash. We have, because none of us are in sales, we don't go on sales club trips or whatever those things, boondoggles are. But there's mechanisms across our org to recognize stars every quarter. And so all of that's about helping people, keeping people, rewarding sort of success in Salesforce.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Want to add anything?
Hires? No? Good. So you touched on trust, Jim. So what does trust mean at Salesforce?
I'll take that one. I think it's interesting because I think when we think about trust, we often think about trust in engineering and in security and in infrastructure. And trust is absolutely a priority for our engineering teams. We've got a few of those folks here today who could talk to that at length. And so, we do things like make sure that our customers have great reliability and uptime. Several years ago, we launched a site called trust.salesforce.com. And it's a public-facing site. Anybody, customers, prospects, competitors, anybody can go to that site and see what the status is of our data centers, of the different nodes, of the different servers, of the different pods. We do something where every release, we test all of our customers' software against all the new innovation that we're releasing, because we know everything just has to work. And we don't want you to have to go and do that testing yourself. And so every time that we're going to make an update to our products, we run tens of millions of tests ourselves to make sure that our customers' capabilities will continue to work seamlessly. But trust is not just in the engineering organization or our products. Trust is actually our number one value at this company, and it permeates everything that we do. It's trust in the recruiting process. It's trust and transparency between a manager and their employee, where you can expect to have an honest conversation with your manager about where you stand and what your growth opportunities are and what you need to work on. And it's trust with transparency from Mark all the way down, where Mark tells us what's on his mind. Mark tells us what is most important to him, and he'll post it on Chatter. And so all 27,000 employees know exactly what's on their CEO's mind. It's pretty different for a company of this size. I think most companies don't do that. It's just trust in how we communicate with our customers. We don't want to make promises about things that we're not going to be building. And so you literally see trust in every aspect of how we work as a company, not just in technology and products.
Any other comments on trust? Yeah, Diego?
I can speak a little bit from the engineering point of view. I think you touched on the trust engineering stuff. But for example, to me, it was interesting that I travel a lot to Europe, and I meet a lot of customers there. And it was really interesting to me because as an engineer, I write some code and we're good, right? Ship it. But to me, the trust when we talk to customers and we really take care of them, especially in the sense that when we release something, to your point, you want to know what's going on, are you going to break me, how this is going to affect me, and the fact that we're very, very, helping them, every single one of them, especially in Europe, because you think that, we're a global company, maybe, in different parts of the world it's going to be different, but to me, going there and see all the help that the teams are doing for helping every customer and just talking to them about technology, like this is what we're doing, this is going to happen, and this is the fact that they are very open and we're very open to have a conversation. When there was a problem, we are all very, talking to each other, right? It's not like, yeah, we signed this thing there and we're not gonna, talk about it anymore, like pay us the bill at the end of the month. It's more like we need to make sure that they're happy, and we do that. And you see that when we go and talk about technology, they love it, right? And for me, that's something that I learned here, that I thought, it's my boundaries on the code, I finish and it's done, the product team takes care of it. It's like a cycle of all the parts of engineering and all the parts of the, account executives and solution engineers and all these people that actually make everyone successful. And to me, it was interesting from an engineering point of view for trust.
So you touch on trust as one of our values. Let's go on to one of the other values that we really hold dear to our heart, which is innovation. So how do we foster innovation at our company?
So I can give you an example. I was one of the first engineers working on the Salesforce One, which is our mobile platform, which is what now we call Lightning. And so that was not so long ago, right? And so the fact that when I started the project, it was like 3 files. And the fact that now has become a platform, it just speaks a lot into the short amount of time that we have to be able to deliver that. And I remember we just literally landed Salesforce One, and Mark and Parker were already saying, so when do we do desktop? We need it by yesterday, right? So this is I think Jimmy I spoke to it a little bit. It's like this thing of it never stop. It's like a startup. I remember when I joined, like, man, next release already, but we're finishing this one. It's like, it's just non-stop all the time. The designs are coming as you're like, still developing the version that you're going to see in 3 months. We're already in the 6 months ahead. So it's like a lot of energy, but it's amazing, right? That's why I think we keep on growing and doing things right. It's just because this mentality of failing fast. And it's like we do stuff, it doesn't work, we keep trying, right? And to me, that was very interesting when I joined. Like it's just like a startup of 20,000 people. And that's, I think, why we're where we are.
Yeah, I wanted to echo part of what you just said about growth, the connection between growth for us and innovation. Since I've been here, like the entire time the company has been growing and growing constantly. And so growth ends up being one of our core values and one of the things that makes us us. And it's it comes to the extent that like, if we're not growing, if we're not changing, if things aren't moving fast, it feels a little strange. And we're like, what's going on? What's next? What's next? What's next? And that's kind of the thing that pushes us to innovate and continue to grow things, to make things better, to learn more, to build more, all of that.
I just, I work on Einstein, which kind of came out of nowhere in like a year and a half. and a lot of our innovation comes because we're very paranoid, I think. A lot of big companies, they just focus, if you've ever read like The Innovator's Dilemma, they just focus on the thing that makes them money and they don't sort of look to the future. Mm-hmm. And I think we have a really good set of operating principles that really help us think about outside in what's changing in the industry and how we need to pivot. But it's not just technology that, like, I'm a marketer, so I'm going to take us away from technology for a second, because it's also innovation in how we do things. And I'm going to just out Gino for a second, because he and one of my colleagues, Jessica, did probably one of the most innovative things that I think at Dreamforce like 6 years ago.
Oh, gosh.
We were trying to figure out how to bring a little bit more fun to Dreamforce, and he organized this massive flash mob in like 2 weeks. And it was just a way to get some attention to an emerging product.
Yeah,
and
something
so
fun, something different.
We're like, we're innovative both in technology, but also in how we do things.
Yeah.
And there was no one that was like, don't do that. That's not approved. It's like all of a sudden there was a flash mob happening at Dreamforce.
Flash mob of like 50 people, customers, partners,
YMCA, everyone.
Employees, yeah.
Anyway,
people.
So little divergence. Sorry.
But yeah, so it's interesting because it's funny how much we're embedded in the culture, because we literally touched on 3 of the 4 core values already automatically. But the fourth one that also kind of ties into innovation is equality, which is really new for us, especially with the intro I had with our new Office of Equality. So Equality for All obviously is a larger scope in regards to diversity and inclusion, right? Diversity and inclusion is kind of the base now, and we're kind of moving above to this new age of equality where that's the other thing that is encompassing of everything, where we actually all foster the collaboration and different viewpoints. So we need those different viewpoints to become innovative, to grow in the direction that the world is growing. And so that being our fourth core value is one of the major pieces that I think I love about this company, and I see us innovating constantly because of that value. But because of that, Mark has made a huge deal about equality and inclusion. So how has the role of equality changed at Salesforce for you guys since you've been here? I mean, it wasn't a core value before, but what are you seeing now, especially in T&P?
I'll just say that, since I have the mic, I'll give a quick anecdote. It's forced us to be more deliberate in everything we do. A good example is in recruiting and hiring. It used to be like, oh, I know this person, let's get them in. And if you've ever worked at a startup, this is often how startups hire. This person's good, let's get them in, let's go. And now we're constantly asking ourselves, did we run an inclusive process? Did we see as many candidates as we think we can see? Did we cast our net to the far reaches of the country or the world? Did we look beyond the sort of the typical person and maybe go 1 degree out and say, this person actually has the same skill sets, even if their resume doesn't say that. And so, it's a really important process change that we've put in, at least in my department, but it's one of those things that is part of growing up and being mindful about having equality as a value.
Yeah, and I feel like even small things, deliberate things, right? Like if you saw these during registration, these pronoun pins, right? We're trying to be inclusive. We're making an effort to make sure we have the community present and making sure we're representative of the attendees as yourselves coming to a conference like this. So there's small things, there's big things. Anything else you've all seen in your sides?
So I can probably speak a little bit to that. So to me, coming from another culture, I'm from Spain. I'm very loud, very talkative. So the fact that I haven't have to change, this equality might be new, but for me, it's not new, right? Like the fact that for me, it was natural. Like I didn't have to change. I didn't have to be careful of what I say, or I might be distorted or something. Like just people affect me as I am. I'm who I am at work. Janine can attest to that. And to me, that's the quality. There's nothing that is new now. Sure, maybe we surface it more, but to me, it was never an issue. It was like something part of the culture of the company, right? And I have never felt excluded in any shape or form or way. It's like I'm the Spaniard. I'm the crazy guy, always yelling, and I love it. To me, that's part of who I am, right? And part of everyone accepts who I am. It's just what makes the culture great. It's not now have equality. It's nothing new. That's what to me is important. It was been there since the beginning, right? And it's awesome. That's why I'm still here.
One thing that I was really impressed by was how much this focus on equality has changed how we talk to our customers. So Shell became a customer of ours somewhat recently. There's an article in Diginomica about it, and we recently had what we call an EBC, an Executive Briefing Center meeting with Shell. And it was Mark Benioff, our CEO, and it was the head CIO of Shell, and then they have different CIOs for the different parts of their business, right, downstream and upstream, and so there were probably 12 or 15 people from Shell there. And they had Mark, and not a lot of customers get that sort of opportunity. And I kind of went in expecting they're going to ask about roadmap, they're going to want to know about future technology, they're going to want to know where the data centers are going to be in the next 5 years. It's not what they wanted to talk about. They wanted to talk about equality. They asked Mark about his vision. They asked Mark about how he decided to make this a core value, how he's rolling it out across the company, and what impact they're seeing because of that. And so you had 15 to 18 very senior executives in a room together talking about how you bring equality as a value into a company and the impact that that's had on their culture. And it was amazing. It's totally changed how we engage with our customers, and I was really impressed by that.
I was going to add that one of the things that I'm most proud of about the way that equality has become a value here is that it kind of started from our community, from our employees. There's been, we've had equality groups at Salesforce for many years, where, groups of different types of people get together and be able to support each other and talk about work and have an inclusive, a place that is especially their own. But, it kind of surfaced to the level of the whole company when, a group in Indiana, the Outforce group in Indiana said, hey, there's this discriminatory bill that's going on here. Mark, can you help us? And Mark said, yes.
Tweet hurled around the world.
And yes, the tweet. and even beyond that, like as we grow, we serve more and more people around the world. We serve more and more communities. We serve more and more organizations, and all of that, we want to also reflect within ourselves and be clear that we are building for everyone. And so I love that this didn't come out of oh my God, there was a lawsuit. We have to be more equal and inclusive. This came from us saying like, hey, this is the way we are. We're happy about it. We're proud about it. Let's be louder about it.
Yeah, and to Janine's point, the different affinities so far that are represented as official groups within the company, Bold Force, which was a Black employee network, Latino Force, Pacific Force, which is our Asian Pacific Islander group, Outforce, which is the group I founded a few years ago for the sexual orientation and gender identity diversity, women's group, Vet Force for veterans, Ability for disabilities, and there's more coming online because the employees are saying that they want it. So we're listening and we're actually making things happen. So, any questions from the audience? You have a really, really attentive panel here that you can ask anything of just about the life at Salesforce, so you know what we're all about. Would love to hear it. Yes. Oh, we got a mic coming to you. Yeah.
Thank you. Considering that you guys have all been here for a really long time, and Janine, you mentioned 13 years and seeing the company grow, just wondering, with regards to the expansion, how you deal with sort of staying focused and or working across teams.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Seema was explaining earlier, the V2 mom does an amazing job of clarifying our priorities. So we know we can look at this and we can be like, this is number one this year. This is where I'm going to put my energy. The other lens that we put on it would be the company value lens. So trust is always number one. So what that does between those two things is it kind of makes my job a lot clearer. So I can say, okay, this product is the thing that is most important for me to work on right now. And I have to be careful not to impact any of our existing customers or, sacrifice trust in any way. And so those two things together end up kind of helping map out what I do, how I do it. Because it is very fast-paced, as Jim was explaining. There's a lot of things flying at you. And so you just got to keep those things in mind, and that'll help you kind of get through and be successful.
Good question. What else? You got an attentive group? Yep. Got a mic coming to you.
So on equality, sometimes in certain areas, there's a particular population which is more available in the market. There could be situations where you have to deal with things like reverse bias, how to control that, and how do you guys do that?
Well, I know that there's a lot of training now being developed now that the Office of Equality is in place. So unconscious bias training and figuring out other ways to handle bias in general. They're in their development right now, so we're just in the beginning stages of getting things happening, but I don't know if any programs that you've seen within your departments has already sprung up.
So my team has all gone through a bunch of bias training, and part of it is putting bias, everyone has bias whether they know it or not. That's the reality. And so then the question is it conscious bias or unconscious bias? Mm-hmm. And part of dealing with bias is acknowledging bias, but also putting in more systems. So like what we focus, at least in product marketing, is creating a lot more rigor around our process. So 6.5 years ago when I joined product marketing, it was a very white team, and we literally one of the questions is like, could I sit next to this person on a 6-hour plane flight? And that's not the right question to ask. So a lot of what we do is go back and make our interview process much more project-based. So we work on projects with candidates and really try to evaluate, can they do this job well, and do they intuitively know how to do product marketing, and it's a very competitive hire. So it's also like, how well do they understand the technology space? How well do they take feedback? Is one of the things we test really hard, strict, because we're in a company run by a marketer. His name is Mark. And so if you don't know how to take feedback in marketing, you don't last long in marketing.
Right.
So that's one of the things we test a lot. I don't know. And you guys done anything around bias? I think part of it also is like expanding your team, at least in the hiring process, not making it like, oh, I'm just making a decision, but like I need lots of people to weigh in on this. So, right. But the other thing that I think that's also, to your point, you kind of, I don't know if you asked this, but you brought up something that's really interesting is we have been very geographically centered for a long time in San Francisco. I bet Janine, when you were here, is like, oh, if you don't work in San Francisco, you don't work here. And we now have major offices in Europe and Indianapolis, and we just opened a tower in New York City, Hyderabad, London. We have remote dev centers in Colorado too. So I think technology, in 13 years, Google Hangouts wasn't around. So the ability to work distributed has changed, and that allows us to really say, let's go find the best talent, not the talent that's here in the Bay Area.
Good question. Got another one.
Thank you. So I work as an auditor at an investment bank, and we call the people that we audit our clients. So one thing that I just always wondered about, like Salesforce, in terms of the products that they can offer customers, do you ever think about the notion of what a client is and how many people work with clients to manage their relationships and be productive with them? So for instance, I'm constantly having emails with each of my different clients on different audits and having exchanges, chats, and all sorts of things that you do in a normal CRM tool. Have you ever expanded and thought about expanding your ideas out to the different kinds of clients that happen within different organizations?
I know that without using the word client, we definitely have that notion. If you think about what our business model is, it's, and maybe this is not a new concept, but at the time Salesforce started, it was new, which is subscription software. And so the very notion of like, you have a stakeholder in your customer and you constantly have to be servicing that stakeholder sort of orients at least all the customer-facing teams to be very focused on servicing the clients. But then our internal teams, and Gino, you could probably talk about this because you were on an internal team. You definitely thought of us as stakeholders to your business. And,
correct.
And I use that word deliberately, stakeholders, because I think, to be successful at Salesforce, you have to know who your stakeholders are. And if your stakeholder is your customer or your manager or whatever, you have to pay attention to your stakeholder and then use whatever means possible to service that stakeholder.
Yeah, we've started calling some of our stakeholders customers too. And I feel like that switch has changed the way we think of them and has been helpful to really kind of make us more customer driven, since we have so much of a culture of customer success. And so switching it a little bit from stakeholder to customer has made us, right, Diego? Diego has a lot of internal customers.
And let's be honest, we have a technology that's called customer relationship management. So we basically inside of Salesforce run thousands of Salesforce orgs that are all about how do I use Salesforce to do billing or whatever process I'm trying to do. And that's kind of the genius of the platform is any process that you're running, you can customize it to your team. And so because it's free for internal use, there's a lot of internal applications of Salesforce for things like what you do.
Yeah, we run sessions called Salesforce on Salesforce, and one of the things we talk about how we use the CRM part of Salesforce to talk to our customers, and I think we also use it to talk about how we use it internally as well. Because we know so much about it, we end up being really deep users of it, and there's a lot of innovative things that we do all throughout the company on how we use it.
So just to double click on something Jim said at the end, that we actually use Salesforce to do this for different groups of clients. So our PR team has an instance of Salesforce with an app they call PR Force, and that's how they track all of their interactions with the press and they manage those relationships. Our analyst relations team does the same thing. They have AR for us, and that's how they manage all of their relationships through our own CRM tool with all the different analysts. Investor relations team does the same thing. Internally, our finance team has built an app on Salesforce that they call Budget Force. And a lot of us are their internal clients, right? Because we're kind of using the budget that they're allocating to us, and we manage that relationship with them and our spend on Budget Force. So we are using instances of Salesforce and custom apps to manage relationships with all of those types of clients, whether internal or external.
And I'll round it out kind of kumbaya-ish here with Salesforce jargon, stakeholder, customer, whatever it may be, it's still considered within our Ohana, which is interesting because you're all Ohana as well, right? So the stuff that we're doing, trust, innovation, growth, everything of that sort, we're all doing together to make sure we can all do our jobs well, and we can make sure that we're putting out a product and service that's good for our customers as well. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Jim.
Well, while we're waiting for the mic to get you, I'll just say the only reason you should not work at Salesforce is if you don't like Hawaiian words. We have a founder who came up with the idea for this business in Hawaii, and therefore we use a lot of Hawaiian words.
All of our conference rooms.
Yeah, and so if you don't like Hawaiian words, you just kindly don't apply.
Is this on? Okay. This is more from an engineering perspective. It sounds like you guys have really exciting pace and you're going all the time. I'm just wondering, how do you keep everyone I've talked to who works at Salesforce, first of all, seems so not cynical, which is wonderfully refreshing. And I'm just wondering, how do you keep, from getting into that, chewing each other's heads off stress mode when you're moving at that pace all the time, which is an exciting pace, but if you don't have that perfect dynamic, it can become a kind of toxic environment sometimes.
Very interesting question. So since we're now actually about to deliver the new release, so I'm part of, so Jenny and I work on the platform, right? So it means that we support every single engineer, like the 3,000 I think we are. So yeah, sometimes can be challenging. But at the end of the day, it's about what we talk a little bit in the sense that we all can express our opinions. We have meetings that sometimes someone will be right, someone will be wrong. But I think to me, we keep, for example, I yell a lot, but it doesn't mean that I'm yelling because you're saying something wrong. I believe that what you're saying is not entirely correct, right? And at the end of the day, we're at the meeting, we're all friends, right? And I think this is very important, right? To kind of keep, you challenge yourself in the sense that, as an architect, that's our job to kind of make sure that everything is aligned and make sure that everyone understands why we're making the decisions that we're making, right? And the fact that having the trust of people to challenge that is good sometimes, is, you want to kill somebody, but that's okay. In the sense that it's all for the good of the product, for the good, and it's all about, I think we're very open of, if you're wrong, that's okay, right? To me, the fact that I can just express my ideas without the fear of what they're gonna say, if I am wrong, maybe, I'm not gonna get promoted or who knows what, right? I think, and there's no fear at all of, expressing engineering, especially in technical, you have to make sure that what you're doing is the right thing, right? So you have to I always think that there's no architecture that is done by one person that is correct. And that's why, for example, we have architect meetings and we make sure that we are all aligned, we talk to each other. And sometimes, there's gonna be situations in which it's not gonna be easy, right? But I think we all help each other a little bit on, and it sounds a little bit cliche, but, it's more like, you say something else, we debate, and at the end, sometimes you will win, sometimes you will lose, but it doesn't go up to personal stuff. It's technical, and we go beers after, and we have fun. And the fact that everyone is aligned in that culture is very important, right? And that's at least how I see it, is we being the guy who's gonna always break stuff, right? And we have a lot of, people yelling at us because, but breaking things is good, because if you're breaking things, it means that you're doing actually things right. Well, not entirely, but you get the point.
Breaking things before it gets to our customers. Yes. And then we fix it before it gets to our customers.
Yeah. Okay. It's all internal, we're 3 months ahead, so that's good.
Well, that said, if you want to ask our panelists questions after, please feel free to come on up and ask questions. But if you mind joining me in thanking Seema, Diego, Janine, and Jim for a cool panel about life at Salesforce. Hope you all enjoy your Trailhead DX experience this week, and we will see you soon. Thank you.